What happens when a marriage of convenience transforms into something deeper and more genuine? Emily and Daniel, childhood friends, never imagined that their destinies would intertwine in such an unexpected way. When Emily is left by her fiancé just 2 weeks before the wedding, she finds herself lost and helpless. Daniel, always present in her life, offers an unexpected solution: that they marry to relieve the pressure from their families. The proposal seems simple, and both agree that it will be a union only on the surface, with no real commitment. Emily, a young woman with a kind heart and dreams of happiness, has always believed in true love. However, her life turns into a nightmare when her fiancé abandons her, leaving a deep wound in her heart. Daniel, on the other hand, has always been the loyal friend, but social pressure and the expectation of a secure future lead him to make a risky decision. The marriage that should have been a mere convenience reveals itself to be a fertile ground for complex and unresolved feelings. During the honeymoon, something changes. Daniel begins to see Emily in a new light, admiring her beauty and kindness. However, he finds himself torn between what he feels and what he thinks he should feel, opting to appear indifferent and get closer to another woman, Laura. The game of jealousy he tries to create does not go as planned, and Emily, sensing Daniel's coldness, decides that continuing the charade is no longer worth it. The revelation that her ex-fiancé has come back to seek her only intensifies her pain. As the climax approaches, Daniel realizes the error of his actions. The urgency to prevent Emily from leaving drives him to run to the airport, but he arrives too late. Devastation and reflection on his failures consume him, and the time that follows is marked by an emptiness he cannot fill. However, fate has other plans. A chance encounter reignites hope, and with courage, Daniel confesses, admitting that despite everything, he has always loved Emily. To his surprise, she reveals that her feelings are mutual. Finally, the two reconcile, realizing that the initial farce has transformed into genuine love. They decide to start anew, committing to truly know each other and build a real relationship where both their dreams and hopes can flourish. Together, they choose a future that reflects what truly matters, a love that has overcome adversity and become the foundation of their new life. Emily and Daniel were about to discover that life doesn't always follow the script one expects. After the marriage of convenience, the young woman still struggled with the pain of her ex-fiancé's betrayal and the insecurity of an uncertain future. Daniel, for his part, tried to cope with his own confusing feelings, while the promise of true love drew ever closer. The honeymoon, which should have been a moment of joy, turned into an emotional battleground. Daniel, unable to handle the new emotions that arose, decided to distance himself from Emily. He began to meet frequently with Laura, a charismatic and attractive co-worker who seemed to charm everyone around her. Laura's presence in his life not only distracted him but also made him feel more secure in such a turbulent time. Daniel believed that by creating a scenario of jealousy, he could make Emily realize how desirable he was. However, this strategy proved to be a backfire. Meanwhile, Emily felt increasingly isolated. Daniel's indifference left her perplexed and sad. Memories of their childhood friendship flooded her mind, and she wondered how they had come to this point. To complicate matters further, Emily's ex-fiancé reached out to her again, sending messages that reopened old wounds. He seemed remorseful and determined to win her heart back. This new pressure left her even more confused. How could she trust someone who had hurt her so deeply? Daniel, noticing the change in Emily, began to feel a growing restlessness inside him. He saw her drifting away, and the thought of losing the only person who had always been by his side terrified him. However, Laura's advice to not show vulnerability left him hesitant. He found himself trapped between the fear of exposing himself and the need to fight for the love he now recognized he felt for Emily. Daniel's internal conflict intensified with each passing day, challenging his convictions about what was right and what was expected of him. The atmosphere of tension grew, and their interactions became increasingly distant. Emily began to question whether it was really worth fighting for a love that seemed so fragile. The fear of getting hurt again made her hesitate to open her heart to Daniel. She also brought to light her insecurities, reflecting on her self-esteem and what she truly desired in her life. The pain of the past followed her like a shadow, and she found herself in a cycle of doubts and fears that trapped her. The challenges that confronted Daniel as he tried to get closer to Emily were intense. He realized that Laura's advice, though well-meaning, was not what he truly needed. With each encounter he had with Laura, the feeling of emptiness and regret increased. Daniel began to see that his actions were not only pushing Emily away but also distancing him from who he really was. He wondered if he could overcome his pride and open up to Emily, revealing his true emotions. Meanwhile, the return of Emily's ex-fiancé brought forth a whirlwind of feelings. Her desire for reconciliation with the past and the pressure from their families forced her to make difficult decisions. Social expectations and the fear of disappointing others weighed heavily on her shoulders. Emily found herself in a dilemma: follow the easier path of reconciling with her ex-fiancé or risk discovering if her love for Daniel could blossom. This dilemma made her question her beliefs about love and what it truly meant to be happy. When the tension between them reached its peak, Emily decided that she could no longer live in a state of uncertainty. The pain of betrayal and Daniel's confusing feelings made her realize that she needed clarity. She decided to confront Daniel about his feelings and the changes that had occurred since their marriage began. This conversation, which she hoped would bring answers, could also be the key to both of their healing. The fear of getting hurt was palpable, but the need to find the truth was even stronger. The path was fraught with obstacles, and each one challenged not only their relationship but also the inner strength they both possessed. The search for true love demanded courage, sincerity, and the willingness to face their deepest fears. What initially seemed to be a union of convenience was now becoming an emotional battleground, where each needed to fight for themselves and for the other. The future was at stake, and the decisions they made could change the course of their lives forever. As the tension between Emily and Daniel intensified, both found themselves surrounded by dilemmas that challenged their convictions. External pressures, particularly from Emily's ex-fiancé and Laura's influence over Daniel, seemed to increase each day. Emily felt the weight of familial and social expectations pushing her toward a reconciliation she wasn't sure she truly wanted. Each message she received from her ex-fiancé made her relive memories of a love that, however painful, still had an appeal. Insecurity settled in her heart, and she questioned whether she was making the right choice by distancing herself from a love that could be genuine. On the other hand, Daniel struggled against his own limitations. He knew he needed to be honest with Emily, but the fear of opening up and exposing himself paralyzed him. Laura's influence, which always seemed so confident and secure, only heightened his sense of inadequacy. Daniel began to feel like an imposter, caught between the image he had created for himself and the reality of his feelings. While he enjoyed moments with Laura, a sense of guilt grew in his chest, as if he were betraying Emily again, even though there was no formal romantic relationship between them. In a moment of reflection, Daniel realized that his strategy of creating jealousy was not working as he had hoped. Instead of attracting Emily, he was pushing her further away. Each shared laugh with Laura seemed to echo in his mind as a reminder that he was distancing himself from the only person who truly mattered. This realization left him distressed, and the emotional tension began to manifest in his physical health. He felt tired, sleepless nights accumulated, and anxiety manifested in constant headaches and a lack of appetite. Meanwhile, Emily began to distance herself not only from Daniel but also from friends and family, sinking into a sea of confusion. The pain of her ex-fiancé's betrayal and Daniel's indifference became a burden too heavy to bear. The nights were long and lonely, and tears often streamed down her face as she wondered if she would ever find happiness again. The fear of another disappointment made her hesitate to open her heart, not only to Daniel but to anyone. Her self-esteem seemed to crumble, leading her to question whether she was worthy of love. The situation became even more complicated when, one night at work, Daniel had a heated argument with Laura. She did not understand why he still cared so much about Emily and challenged him to make a decision. That phrase echoed in Daniel's mind like an alarm. He realized he was at a crossroads: continue living a lie beside Laura or risk fighting for Emily, even if it meant facing his fears. Meanwhile, Emily decided it was time to confront Daniel. She could no longer live in uncertainty, and the pain of betrayal and indifference was unbearable. She remembered a moment when, as children, they used to sit together under the big tree in the yard and share their dreams. That image inspired her to seek the truth, even if it meant getting hurt again. Her heart pulsed with hope and fear at the same time. When Emily finally met with Daniel, the atmosphere was charged with emotions. What should have been an open conversation was wrapped in tense silence. They both knew that the conversation could change everything, but the fear of being vulnerable kept them on the sidelines. Daniel began to speak, but the words failed. He looked into Emily's eyes and saw not only the pain but also the strength she had cultivated over time. For a moment, he felt small and powerless in the face of the reality he had created. Emily, noticing his hesitation, decided it was her turn to open up. With a trembling voice, she shared her fears, her insecurities, and the confusion that surrounded her. The words flowed like a river emptying out, carrying away the accumulated pain. As she spoke, Daniel realized that the barrier he had built around himself was crumbling. He wanted to say that he was willing to fight, that his emotions were real, and that Laura was nothing more than a distraction. But the truth still stuck in his throat. The conversation not only unveiled hidden feelings but also exposed the flaws and fears that both carried. The weight of their decisions became increasingly tangible, and the emotional tension felt unbearable. What was at stake was not just love, but the possibility of a future together, filled with hopes and challenges. Emily knew she needed clarity and that Daniel had to face his own demons, but the choice they both had to make could shape their lives forever. The battle for their hearts was just beginning, and the road ahead seemed full of uncertainties and unfulfilled promises. The tense atmosphere between Emily and Daniel took an unexpected turn when, on returning from a meeting that was supposed to be revealing, a car accident happened right before them. A collision between two vehicles, caused by the recklessness of a distracted driver, echoed through the quiet streets of the city. The crash was so loud that it made both their hearts race. Instinctively, they ran to help. The impact of the scene was devastating. Injured people, screams, and the ambulance siren in the background. Daniel, amidst the chaos, found himself confronted with the fragility of life. Adrenaline surged through his veins, and for a moment, he forgot his personal worries. He remembered how, in extreme situations, what really matters is being present for those we love. As he helped pull a woman from one of the cars, his mind filled with thoughts about everything that was at stake in his life, about the love he had for Emily and the need to be true. Emily, on the other hand, stood frozen for a moment. The sight of blood and pain around her made her reflect on her own emotional wounds. Tears streamed down her face, not only from the terrifying scene but also from the realization that life is short and unpredictable. Amid the despair, she realized she had become so caught up in her fears that she had almost forgotten to live. What was holding her back from loving again? The betrayal of her ex-fiancé? Insecurities about her own worth? The urgency of the situation made her reconsider her choices, and a determination began to form in her heart. When the ambulance arrived and the paramedics rushed to help, Daniel and Emily exchanged glances. Their look carried a weight that could not be ignored. In that moment, the truth about their feelings became undeniable. Daniel realized he could no longer hide behind his insecurities and that he needed to open up to Emily. The fear that paralyzed him dissolved in the face of the raw reality they were living. After the chaos settled and the injuries began to be treated, Daniel pulled Emily to a quieter corner, away from the turmoil. He felt that this was the decisive moment. "Emily," he began, his voice trembling, "I need to tell you that what happened today made me realize that life is too short for me to keep hiding behind my insecurities. I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to live without you." Emily looked into his eyes, and something inside her broke. The barriers she had built over time began to crumble. "Daniel, I'm also tired of living in fear," she replied, the sincerity in her voice echoing the pain they both felt. "I don't want to let myself be carried away by others' expectations anymore. I want to be myself, and that includes you." The conversation that followed was filled with honesty and vulnerability. Daniel spoke about his weaknesses, how pressure and fear had made him act selfishly. He admitted that he was trying to protect himself while hurting Emily. And, hearing this, Emily felt a weight lifted from her shoulders. Daniel's words touched her deeply, and she realized that even with the wounds of the past, there was space for a new story, a new chance. After that night, both emerged from the accident transformed. The intensity of the experience made them rethink their priorities. Daniel decided he needed to distance himself from Laura, not only because he wanted to be faithful to Emily but also because he needed to be true to himself. He understood that true happiness could not be found in distractions, but rather in opening up to love and vulnerability. Emily, for her part, realized she needed to work on her self-esteem and learn to trust again. The accident reminded her that life is full of uncertainties, and that true love is worth the risk. She decided she would not allow past experiences to define her future. She was willing to allow herself to love again, even in the face of the fear she felt. From that day forward, their journey became one of healing and self-discovery. They learned to support each other, to share their insecurities, and to build a relationship based on honesty and respect. The experience of the accident not only united them but also made them realize that life is precious and that each moment should be lived fully. The battle for their hearts was now not just about love, but about self-knowledge and the courage to face challenges together. After the night that changed everything, Daniel and Emily found themselves in a new chapter of their lives. The accident had brought them together in a way neither could have imagined. Since then, life seemed more intense and full of meaning. However, this transformation did not come without its challenges. Daniel, after deciding to distance himself from Laura, faced a whirlwind of emotions. At work, the tension increased. Laura did not take the breakup well. She started to create uncomfortable situations, making spiteful comments about his relationship with Emily to their colleagues. Daniel tried to ignore it, but the pressure affected him. He felt torn between the desire to protect Emily and the need to maintain a healthy work environment. At home, anxiety pulsed in his chest, and he often found himself lost in thoughts about what might happen next. Meanwhile, Emily was dealing with her own demons. The decision to open up to Daniel was a brave step, but not without its complications. In conversations with her friends, she often found herself questioning her choices. "What if you get hurt again?" one of them asked, with a worried look. Emily tried to respond with confidence, but the truth was that fear still haunted her. Every laugh shared with Daniel was accompanied by a shadow of uncertainty. She wondered if she could truly open her heart without getting hurt again. One night, while they were walking together in the park, Daniel noticed that the atmosphere was different. Emily was quiet, lost in her thoughts. He decided to break the ice. "Hey, are you okay? You look worried." Her gaze shifted, as if she were searching for the right words. "I'm just thinking about all this. About us. I want this, Daniel, but what if I'm not good enough? What if this ends in pain again?" Daniel stopped, holding her hands. "Listen, we can't predict the future. But I know I want to try. I want to be the person you can count on, even when things get tough." Emily felt the warmth of his words, but insecurity still consumed her. In the following days, they both began to work on themselves. Daniel decided to seek a therapist. He knew he needed to deal with the pressure he felt at work and how it affected his relationship. Talking to a professional helped him organize his thoughts and understand that change takes time, and that he should be patient with himself. Emily, on the other hand, started attending self-discovery classes. The idea of understanding herself better excited her, but at the same time, it challenged her. In one of the classes, the teacher asked everyone to write a letter to themselves, addressing their fears and insecurities. Emily hesitated, but the words began to flow. She wrote about betrayal, about the fear of not being enough, and about the desire to love again. Upon finishing, she felt an unexpected lightness, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The following week, Daniel and Emily met for coffee. Both were a bit further along the path of healing, but the weight of the world was still present. As they talked, Daniel shared about therapy and how he was learning to see himself with more compassion. Emily, for her part, spoke about the letter she wrote and how it helped her understand her emotions. The conversation flowed, filled with vulnerability and hope. However, even with these positive steps, new obstacles arose. Laura, in a last-ditch effort for revenge, began to spread malicious rumors about Daniel, insinuating that he was disloyal and that he was just using Emily. Daniel felt powerless. He knew it was a lie, but the pain of seeing Emily affected by those words consumed him. He wanted to protect her, but he didn't know how. In a moment of despair, he decided to confront Laura. They met at a cafe. "You need to stop this. What you're doing isn't fair," he said, anger and frustration evident in his voice. Laura, with a sarcastic smile, replied, "Do you think this will make a difference? Emily isn't the only one who can get hurt." Hearing this, Daniel realized he was dealing with a situation much more complicated than he had imagined. Meanwhile, Emily, upon learning of the conversation, felt divided. She wanted to support Daniel, but she also felt the pressure of Laura's words. Could it be that Daniel wasn't as good as he seemed? She decided she needed to confront him, not with anger, but with sincerity. "Daniel, I trust you, but all this is leaving me confused. How can we get through this together if lies are surrounding us?" These moments of tension showed that Daniel and Emily's journey was far from easy. The struggle for true love required courage and determination. Yet, as they faced these new challenges, they both began to realize that, even with the difficulties, they were more connected than ever, and the hope for a future together began to shine through the darkness. Daniel sat at the cafe table, the aroma of fresh coffee filling the air as he tried to organize his thoughts. The conversation with Laura still echoed in his mind, and the frustration he felt seemed unbearable. He wanted to protect Emily, but his ex-girlfriend's words left him insecure. What more could he do to show the truth? Looking out the window, he saw couples walking side by side, and a deep desire for a safe and true love enveloped him. He needed to find a way to deal with this, not just for Emily, but for himself. Meanwhile, Emily was on her own journey. After writing the letter about her insecurities, she felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in a long time. The written words not only exposed her fears but also helped her understand that growing meant confronting those feelings. She decided she wouldn't let Laura's rumors pull her away from Daniel. The love she felt for him was strong, and she was beginning to realize that true growth came from believing in herself, regardless of what others thought. That afternoon, after Daniel's tense conversation with Laura, he met Emily in a park. The soft sunlight filtered through the trees, creating a serene backdrop. Emily looked into Daniel's eyes and said, "I want you to know that I trust you. I know we're going through tough times, but I don't want that to push us apart." Emily's words touched Daniel deeply. He realized that the trust she was placing in him was an invaluable gift that needed to be earned. Determined not to let Laura interfere in their relationship, Daniel began to reevaluate his own beliefs. He realized that for too long, he had let others' opinions, especially Laura's, sway him. Now, he wanted to build something solid and true with Emily, and for that, he needed to believe in himself. Therapy helped him see that each challenge was an opportunity for learning. He began to understand that, to face the outside world, he first needed to strengthen himself internally. On the other hand, Emily was also learning to value herself. In her self-discovery classes, she met people who, like her, were facing their own battles. The friendship that developed among them inspired her to open up more, to share her experiences, and to listen to others' stories. Through these connections, she began to understand that she was not alone in her insecurities. Each story of overcoming that she heard fueled her courage and helped her see the beauty in vulnerability. As the days passed, Daniel and Emily became closer, sharing their struggles and victories. They began to support each other, and this union proved to be a pillar of strength. Daniel, by expressing his feelings, discovered that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness but a way to connect more deeply with Emily. And Emily, by opening her heart, realized that trusting Daniel was a powerful choice. She not only allowed herself to love but also allowed herself to be loved. One day, while they were walking together, Daniel stopped and said, "You know, I'm not perfect, and I know I've made mistakes. But I'm willing to learn and grow with you by my side." His words echoed in her heart, and for the first time, Emily felt that true love was a journey of mutual growth, where both could support and inspire each other. Laura, on the other hand, continued to try to intervene. But now, Daniel and Emily were stronger. They learned to protect themselves from lies and to find comfort in each other. The adversities they faced became valuable lessons. Daniel realized that success wasn't just about keeping a job or pleasing others, but about being true to himself and to the people who really mattered. Emily, in turn, understood that love wasn't something that could be measured, but rather something that grew from trust and understanding. Over time, Daniel and Emily became an example of how overcoming challenges and personal growth can transform lives. They learned that true love isn't free of challenges, but that these challenges can strengthen bonds, creating a deeper connection between two souls. Together, they discovered that by facing their fears and insecurities, they could find the courage to live fully, not just as individuals, but as partners who supported each other every step of the way on this journey of self-discovery. Daniel was at a turning point. The unexpected phone call from Laura that morning shook his world. She insisted that she still had a place in his life, that he should reconsider his relationship with Emily. Her words resonated in his mind, provoking doubts he thought he had left behind. As he walked toward the park where he used to meet Emily, Daniel struggled against the storm of emotions that threatened to destabilize him again. When he arrived at the park, he found Emily sitting on a bench, looking at the leaves gently falling from the trees. The sun illuminated her face, and he couldn't help but notice the peace she exuded. But as he approached, he realized that something was different. The sparkle in her eyes seemed to have dimmed, and a shadow of worry had settled on her face. "Hi, Daniel," she said, forcing a smile. "I was thinking about our last conversation." Those words cut through his heart. He knew that Emily's insecurity was still a daily battle. Daniel took a deep breath, deciding it was time to face his fears, not just for the two of them, but for himself. He needed to be transparent. "Emily, I received a call from Laura," he began, his voice trembling. "She thinks I should reconsider what we have, that maybe I should give her a second chance." The silence that followed felt deafening. Emily's eyes filled with sadness, and Daniel felt a knot form in his stomach. "And what do you think about that?" she asked, vulnerability clearly exposed. "I don't know. I let her influence me in the past. Her words still carry a weight I wish they didn't. But at the same time, I don't want to hurt you," he replied, frustration and confusion evident in his voice. Emily looked at him, and for a moment, Daniel felt like the world had stopped. The leaves continued to fall, but he was frozen in that instant, in her gaze. "Daniel, you need to make the right choice. I can't fight against a ghost from the past. If you truly want to be with me, then you need to decide this once and for all." Those words penetrated his soul. He realized he was allowing Laura's insecurities to affect the love he had for Emily. The truth was that he didn't want to live with one foot in each place, with a divided heart. He loved Emily. The connection they had built was the truest he had ever experienced. "You're right," he said, determination beginning to take shape. "I don't want to lose you because of something that's already in the past. Laura was part of my life, but what we have now is real. It's strong. And I can't let the fears of the past interfere with our future." The tension in the air began to dissipate, and a new light started to shine in Emily's eyes. "Then you need to distance yourself from her, Daniel. I can't love someone who's still tied to what didn't work out." He nodded, feeling the courage grow within him. "I'll do it. I'll distance myself from her and choose you. You are the person I want by my side." With that, Daniel made the decision that would change everything. He knew he needed to end the relationship with Laura once and for all. Deep down, he had already made that decision, but now it was time to act on what he felt. The next day, Daniel called Laura. The conversation was tense but necessary. He explained that he had decided to move on, that what he had with Emily was much more significant and authentic. Laura tried to argue, but he stood firm, refusing to be swayed by her emotional manipulation. When he hung up, he felt a huge weight lifted. The feeling of freedom was overwhelming. When he met Emily again, Daniel approached her with a genuine smile. I did it. I distanced myself from Laura. And I want you to know that I am here, fully committed to you." The tears in Emily's eyes were not of sadness, but of relief. "Thank you for being honest with me. It means the world." In that moment, Daniel realized that true love wasn't just about being together, but also about making tough choices. He had overcome his insecurities and learned to trust in his own strength. Thus, not only did their relationship strengthen, but they both grew as individuals. Together, they walked hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future held. Daniel finally understood that true love requires courage, commitment, and, above all, a conscious choice to be present and support each other, no matter the difficulties that may arise. Daniel felt a mix of relief and anxiety as he walked alongside Emily. The decision he had made to distance himself from Laura brought a new lightness to his heart, but it also made him think about the consequences of his choices. The gentle breeze in the park seemed to soothe his worries, but he knew there was still much to face. In the days that followed, Daniel began to notice the repercussions of his decision. He had not only distanced himself from Laura but also had to deal with the emotional echoes that relationship had left behind. The insecurity that had once consumed him had now transformed into renewed determination. He wanted Emily to know that she was his priority. To that end, Daniel decided to be more present, more attentive. One afternoon, while they were together in a cafe, Daniel allowed himself to open his heart once again. "You know, I used to think that love was something simple, but now I see that it is much more complex. I was afraid of losing what I had built, but I realized that, in fact, I was only drifting away from what was most true." Emily smiled, and her eyes sparkled with understanding. "Love takes courage, doesn't it? Courage to choose and courage to let go. I'm so glad you decided to stay with me." These words echoed in Daniel's mind. He remembered the doubts that haunted him before. Everything seemed so confusing, but now he felt a clarity that encouraged him to move forward. What he had with Emily was unique and special, and he was willing to fight for it. However, it didn't take long for him to face the challenges resulting from his decision. Laura did not take the breakup well, and Daniel received messages from her trying to convince him to reconsider. "You can't just leave me like this, Daniel. We had something good, you can't forget that." With each message, Daniel felt the pressure increasing, but the confidence he had built alongside Emily helped him stay focused. He talked to Emily about it, and they decided together that it was important to set clear boundaries. "She may try to pull you back, but you need to remember what you really want," Emily said, holding his hand. "I'm here, and I want you to feel secure in our relationship." These conversations helped Daniel solidify his decision. He began to understand that love was about building and protecting a safe space for both, away from the uncertainties of the past. Emily's support became an anchor in his life. He felt grateful to have her by his side, and with each passing day, his confidence grew. Over time, Daniel realized that the decision to stay with Emily not only freed him from Laura but also gave him the opportunity to rediscover himself. He got involved in new projects, started engaging in activities he had always wanted to try, like painting and hiking in nature. Life seemed more vibrant, and he couldn't be happier. One night, as they walked under the stars, Daniel stopped and looked at Emily. "You changed my life. When I'm with you, I feel like I can be who I really am. Thank you for supporting me and helping me see what is most important." Emily smiled, and the love they shared filled the air around them. "And I am grateful to you for choosing to love me. Our experiences shape us, but what matters is how we decide to move forward." I'm excited to see what the future holds for us." Those words reaffirmed what Daniel already knew. True love is not devoid of challenges, but it is through them that two people can grow and strengthen each other. He had overcome his insecurities and learned to trust himself and the relationship he had with Emily. Daniel realized that, in the end, the choices he had made had taken him to a place better than he could have ever imagined. Now, he was no longer stuck in the past but was walking toward a bright future, hand in hand with the woman he truly loved. The lessons he had learned would stay with him forever, and he was ready to face whatever came his way, knowing he was exactly where he was meant to be. Daniel watched the stars shining brightly that night. Next to Emily, he felt at peace, as if all his choices had led him to this exact moment. He remembered the confusion and pain he felt when he distanced himself from Laura. Leaving a part of his life behind was not easy, but now he understood that true freedom came from making choices that reflected who he really was. Over the months, Daniel allowed himself to explore new paths. He discovered a passion for painting, immersing himself in colors and shapes that expressed his deepest emotions. Hiking in nature was not just physical exercise but a way to reconnect with himself, to appreciate the beauty of the world around him. He had transformed pain into art, uncertainty into adventure. His relationship with Emily flourished. They laughed together, shared dreams, and built a future that seemed more promising each day. Daniel realized that true love was not just about being present but about creating a space where both felt safe and valued. He remembered Emily's words about the courage that love requires. He had found that courage by choosing to distance himself from Laura, and instead of feeling lost, he now felt stronger. However, Laura's messages still haunted his thoughts from time to time. But instead of being a burden, they became a reminder of how much he had evolved. He was no longer stuck in that chapter of his life. He had written a new story alongside Emily, a story of growth and genuine love. The confidence he had in his new life made him realize that true happiness was not in having what one considers safe, but in pursuing what one truly desires. On a sunny afternoon, while walking through the park, Daniel held Emily's hand and looked into her eyes. "Look, I'm not the same as before. What I went through taught me so much. I learned that life is made of choices, and each choice we make shapes who we are. And choosing you was the best decision I could have made." Emily smiled, and her gaze expressed the same gratitude he felt. "And I learned that love is about mutual growth. You showed me that we can support each other and help each other be better. I'm so happy we're together." Those words further sealed the bond between them. Daniel realized that the journey he had faced was not just about leaving a relationship behind but about finding himself in the process. He felt fulfilled, not just for overcoming his fears but for finding someone who inspired him to be the best version of himself. Looking to the future, he knew there would still be challenges, but now he was ready to face them. He and Emily were together, and that made everything easier. They were ready to build a future filled with love, adventure, and, above all, mutual respect. Daniel's story is a powerful reminder that difficulties can teach us valuable lessons. Each of us has the ability to reinvent ourselves and find happiness in the choices we make. If you have gone through a similar situation or are facing your own battles, remember that transformation is possible. Share your experiences in the comments and inspire others to seek their own journey of overcoming. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that touch the heart. Your interaction is essential for us to keep bringing content that makes a difference. The time to act is now.